In this episode, we talk to Mark Cruth, who is a modern work coach at Atlassian. A wide-ranging conversation between myself, Imran, and Mark, really, though, focusing on storytelling and narrative, and the importance of telling the story of how AI is changing and transforming teams, productivity, and the workforce writ large. Mark has some really great anecdotes and stories of his own of how he's doing that at Atlassian and for some other clients. So it's a great episode, and I hope you enjoy. Hey, Mark, good to see you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. Super excited to be here, Nick. Imran, fantastic meeting you, and I'm excited for our conversation today.
Good. Well, I'm gonna start by going off script because
I love going off script.
You guys have some pretty cool backgrounds, which, I'd say maybe not most, 70 to 80% of the time I speak with somebody virtually, and it's always the filter, the background, but not you guys, right? Imran, Mark, you guys.
I know, right? Imran, we're competing with each other here, right?
Yeah, I painted all of these though, Mark.
Did you really? See, I don't have that. I bought all of those bad investments, which are all my Legos and like nostalgic toys. So I did pay for that, I guess. Well, I give you that for the creativity if you painted those.
No, I definitely didn't. I do get people who ask me that.
With that, Imran, you should just owned it and been like,
totally people ask me that all the time, and I'm like, I don't know if I would be doing it if I was.
What are you saying? Are you saying those pictures aren't that good, or something? Like is that what it is?
Yeah.
I just have books, which just signals something that I'm just
you're the brains here, right, Nick? So you got the books.
I'll let you guys in on a little secret. I've not read half of them. Okay, so it's just
what we don't just pull one of those books. There's a little bar hidden back there.
Well, just out of sight is a flask, but that's cropped. That's cropped. But well, now that we've covered the important topic, I don't know, Mark. I know we were catching up recently, so I'd love to start with surprise, AI, and all the promises and perils. So I call it the BC era of AI, which is before ChatGPT. You've been doing this really cool work for a long time, different big brands, both internally and externally. And, you're leading the charge with teams around things like collaboration and productivity and tooling, where now AI is obviously, coming to impact it. But during this BC era of pre-AI, how does it compare to what we're doing and how we're navigating, the world of work now, if you were to sort of draw a comparison between before and after?
It's fascinating. I'm personally of the opinion, and actually we see this in a lot of our data too. At Atlassian, we do a lot of research in this, and the data is showing us this, is that there is a perceived difference in that, BC era versus today. It's that aspect of we have AI now. We're doing teamwork now. We didn't have it. We were doing teamwork before. The reality, though, is that there's not actually a lot of change happening. I think there's a lot of paper pushing, like we're pushing a little bit over there. We're adding some automation here. We're trying to use LLMs to do support over here. But the reality is we're not seeing a lot of change. And actually at Atlassian, like I mentioned, we do a lot of research in this space. And we actually came out a few weeks ago with a report, our AI collaboration index, we call it. And it was looking at 12,000 knowledge workers around the world. And one of the things that popped up that was, the very big stat that we bring up is that when we talk to leaders and we look at organizations, only 4% of those organizations we've talked to are actually seeing any sort of large change or really efficiencies from AI. And the thing is I think MIT put out a recent study back in the summer that was roughly right about the same. It was 95% was failing. And so for us, I see us a lot of noise. I see a lot of movement, but I don't see a lot of growth. And I think that's indicative of this time where we're experimenting. But the problem is that there's just so much momentum here. My biggest fear is that it's going to get a lot worse before it ever gets better with the adoption of AI, just because we're not thinking about it the right way.
What do you attribute that to? Is it a behavioral, a human problem? Is it an infrastructure problem? A bit of both? Something else?
No, it is. It's a human problem. That's what it is. It's a human problem within that. And really what it is, it's not even necessarily a single human problem. It's a collaboration problem. A lot of the stats, a lot of the things we see out there today are all around individual productivity. You get these numbers like 33% of us are saving, or we're saving 33% of our time. We use AI, getting rid of emails and meetings and all this stuff. It's like, oh my gosh. And we think that if we then say, all right, I've got 10,000 people, and if I'm saving 3 hours a day for each person, like, wow, I've got 30,000, hours each day that I'm actually saving as an organization. Like, that's some efficiencies. But the reality is we're actually not seeing that come back because we're so tunneled in on individual efficiency. We've forgotten that the goal isn't necessarily the person, it's the effectiveness of the organization, it's the effectiveness of the team. And so we're seeing that there's a lack of collaboration focus when it comes to AI. How do you bring AI into your team? How do you augment your team to actually leverage AI and actually think about the actual outcomes you've got? And I think that's what I've got a talk I do around this idea that we need to have AI enabled teamwork. Like, that's really what we need to get to nowadays if we really want to actually start seeing some of these benefits. Because right now we're seeing individual productivity. It is great, but it's not helping the overall whole of the organization.
So, yeah, that's really interesting because I was thinking about like tech transformation, and I know you've done amazing transformation work for some big brands like Boeing and Nordstrom and now at Atlassian. And transformation is not easy, right? And every single time I feel like we've had a technology breakthrough, we're looking for these efficiency gains. And has the SaaS kind of breakthrough or like the tech breakthroughs that we've seen in the past been more centered on individuals versus what we're seeing in this AI transformation are much more, like you said, team, departmental, organizational? Do you think we're like kind of stuck on these, previous constructs on the way we think about tech versus how we should think about it?
That's a really good question. I like how you kind of think about that from those prior eras we've been in. And I think AI definitely is a different era in terms of how we leverage the tech. Like when I think back to things like, to your point, like, whether it be SaaS or, even things like from a process perspective, when like I come from the agility world. So there'd be these big agile transformations that you would go through. And the problem is, and just like with any kind of transformation, this is my biggest fear with the AI, because believe me, and I imagine you guys have seen this too, there have been a lot of AI transformations being floated around now in big companies out there. The problem is with transformation is that transformation is implying we do this thing, and at the end of it, we're all celebrating. There's cake and balloons, and we've done it. We're at that spot. You know where I'm going? But the problem is that with any of these sorts of things, it's an ongoing growth journey. We have to approach it more iteratively. Like even SaaS, I'd argue that, yes, we've kind of gone through like a SaaS transformation, but really what we've gone through is we've kind of gone through a stumble and fall, and we got back up and then we fell back in another hole as different products started saying, oh, we're going to offer more of a SaaS-based solution, or we're going to offer one. Even for Atlassian, we're moving more towards even just from a cloud perspective. We've made the decision now to get rid of our data center offering here in a few years. It's one of those things where as we continue to move forward, all these organizations who are progressive, who are kind of pushing this perspective are kind of almost, it feels like we're hunting around in the dark. We're kind of, we're inspecting and adapting, but we're not thinking about this as more of an iterative process. We're kind of reacting. And so I think that's my biggest issue with what we see with this word transformation. And that's why I'm kind of afraid when we think about AI, because we're thinking that we're going to plug it, because the way I think about AI transformations, at least what I've heard, is that a lot of people are saying we're going to bring AI in and it's going to transform how we work. There's a lot of implied assumptions in there around how we work. And I'd even argue that before AI was there, we probably weren't working that well to begin with. What is it? Garbage in, garbage out. Same with our process. And so if we take a process and we say, cool, we're going to apply AI to that, we're going to make it more efficient, we're going to get rid of these steps. Awesome. We've applied that. But did we actually step back to be like, do we actually need to do this process? Is this process even relevant nowadays in our business environment that we're in? And I think that's the thing that we really need to step back and do. It's actually move the technology aside and let's actually think about how we work, and then bring AI in, bring technology in, and then start saying, okay, how does this make us better? Because the process gives us the effectiveness. The tooling gives us the efficiency, and you can't blunt force AI for efficiency and expect that effectiveness at the end of the tunnel.
I love this. I've never thought of it this way. This is why conversations like this are great. The transformation thing, which is like the implied assumption in that, especially from like an internal comms messaging, if you're a senior leadership saying, we're bringing in AI and it's going to be a transformation. The implied assumption in that is that there's a before and after, and it's a night and day. Overnight, we're going to have this switch. We're going to be that much better. Maybe I'll float you an analogy and you tell me if you like this. When we look at our own lives, personal lives, we're always changing, right?
Yeah.
We don't really transform unless like some crazy event happens. But like when we navigate our own lives, we change through small steps and increments, and eventually we'll get from A to B. We'll get there, and we look back when we're at B and we go, how did that happen? Right? It wasn't overnight. So maybe it's a helpful metaphor for any of the listeners that like it's as much true in our own personal lives as it is in the business reality, the organizational reality of how we're bringing in AI to bear.
I love that analogy because that's 100% right. One of the things we've even talked about, we have this idea of modern work at Atlassian, and one of our principles of modern work is what we consider evolution over transformation. Really, we want that evolutionary mindset. It's that small inspect and adapt, that small, hey, we're going to try this out. If it works, awesome, let's keep progressing. If it doesn't work, let's pivot. And I think that's, again, you see this with transformations all the time, is that it is we are obsessed with the end state. But the thing is just like what we see a lot with software in general, is that we have this idea of the end state, but we're not there. So we don't actually understand what it feels like to be there, what it really looks like. We're only keeping the variables of the end state that we love and want. But then when we get to that end state, we're like, oh, wait, this is either the market has changed, the demographics of our organization have changed. Something has changed to be like, oh, this isn't the best thing anymore. So for me, that's the biggest thing, is that we're pushing all of our chips in and we're saying, hey, we're betting on that. And you know what? Sometimes, don't get me wrong, sometimes that works, just like it does in Vegas. Sometimes you push it all in on red. Sometimes it lands red, but then a lot of times it doesn't. And it's those moments that it doesn't. You hear about these organizations that do multiple back-to-back transformations. I sit down with leaders all the time, and my first question to them is like, how many of you have been on like one transformation, two transformations, three? And the hands stay up, because they're all allured by this, siren song of this great end state. But the work to get there is going to actually show you what that end state really should be. And that the fact is you never actually know it. You just have to keep evolving with it.
Yeah, I love that. I would say, we're obsessed with the end state and we're obsessed with being instantaneous. And this is very
immediate gratification days, right?
Yeah, Nick and I talk about this all the time. It's, like our personal, kind of immediate gratification, seeing results right away, having that has just kind of come into our work world where we're all just expecting it. And then, we can get into the generational divides and Gen Zs versus millennials and what we see there and how we're expecting it. But how much of that, tell me about the workforce at Atlassian and how you guys really think about change and transformation and, bring something like this. And does it factor in our consumerism into our pseudo business work life?
So it's fascinating. So Atlassian is been a fun company to be part of and watch it grow. So I've been with the organization about 6 years now. And when I joined, we were an organization, maybe 1,500 people. So decent size, but still kind of that startup-y mode, Today, we're a little north of 16,000 people. And so we're an enterprise nowadays, right? That's the reality. And the thing is we've had some pivotal moments in our growth that way, where we've kind of had the option of do we do what all the other organizations do, Or do we take what, we value, the things that have made us successful, and try to scale that? So a great example of this is Atlassian back years ago, I think it was 2016. We had been doing a lot of these internal practices of how we work differently. And one of the things we did is we said, let's publish that out there. So we put out what we call our Atlassian team playbook, and it's a free resource online. Any leaders out there, if you want to go look that up, you can find it. And it's got, today, I think we've got like 72 different plays, we call them, are things that you can do to help you work to solve certain problems, whether it be goal setting, dependency mapping, customer, feedback, things like that. These were things that we had been doing for years. And we noticed as we started getting bigger that the things that helped us back then weren't supporting us as much. Things like, hey, I used to know a lot of the people across different parts of the organization. I could rely on the personal relationship to get work done. But nowadays, that doesn't scale. Plus, you don't know all the people anymore. And so for us, it started investing back in 2020 when we all went distributed, and we built up at Atlassian. We called it our Team Anywhere initiative to allow us to work distributed. In addition to that, we built up this idea of what we call our Teamwork Lab. Now, our Teamwork Lab is a group of actually like PhD behavioral scientists that are there to actually help us iterate and think about our ways of working as we're scaling at Atlassian. They're running constant experiments every week. They're doing new things to try to solve new problems around how we work. And then what we end up doing is we publish a lot of that out there as part of our playbook and other resources. And so I think it's thanks to groups like that Teamwork Lab that helps us kind of keep that iterative, evolving mindset, because we know we won't get it right. The thing is we also have hired a lot of people who've been at organizations who haven't got it right, and they were looking for something different. And so there's a lot of that connection back to whether it be our values, just those ideas of like what we want to be, that has really helped us to kind of evolve. And so as an organization looks at how they want to change, it is being intentional with those kind of iterative patterns, things like a Teamwork Lab, things like, running these small experiments and letting them build up across your organization.
Mm-hmm. Mark, I don't know if it's the smooth radio voice you have.
All the time.
There's more to it than just that. You have this knack for storytelling. Why is storytelling important to you, but important in this broader sense of talent and change?
It's so interesting, because I'm glad you bring up storytelling, because I think everything we've talked about is completely hinged on good storytelling. So I've been obsessed with this idea of storytelling for little over a decade. I kind of got in, I took a class in it, and it opened my eyes to not just the art of it, but the power it has to actually support change across an organization. Because at the end of the day, whether you're switching out technologies, you're adding AI, you're doing any sort of change, small or big. At the end of the day, the people who are actually, what's actually changing are the people. It's their perspectives, their mindsets, how they work. And at the end of the day, we're very, we're dealing with people who are emotional. They've got their own stories in their heads. They've got the ability to kind of create their own direction. And the thing is, in order to link that all together, to get these squishy bags of emotions to actually think about something greater than what they see right in front of them, we've been evolved as humans to actually focus in on compelling stories. And so as I've worked with leadership teams, one of the biggest things I actually do with leadership teams is doing storytelling workshops, just to help them think about not just, telling like a fable or a folktale, but how do you communicate things like your vision, whether it be a vision for a change. So like AI is a great example. AI, as I'm thinking about bringing in AI, if you look at the media today, there's some not so good headlines out there around the impact of AI on the workforce. And so people are reluctant to potentially adopt it. I think in your last episode that you had, your guest actually was talking about people like kind of almost combating the AI, like trying to actually work against it. Mm-hmm. And for me, when people try to work against AI, it's not because they don't want to do it. It's because the narrative that they have right now in their heads is telling a bad story. It's telling a story that they're like, I don't like this. So it's leadership's responsibility to say, what's the story that we actually want to make sure we understand about? Maybe, hey, this is an opportunity for us to grow, to reskill, to actually, I like to say that like AI allows you to do the things that were actually on that job description you read years ago that you got excited about, not the things that you're primarily doing that weren't on that. And so for me, I think storytelling gives you the ability to kind of, again, show the narrative. If you don't do that, it's more of just the, here's what we're doing. And without that kind of almost compelling, okay, and why, and how does this make me feel? And what does this do for me? All of a sudden, we are left to make that story up in our minds, or others are left to fill in that story for us.
And we'll always, because we're story creatures, we will always assign a story. Whether
We
it's
100% will. Even if there's no
story
story to begin with, we will create a story for it.
our own. Yeah.
Exactly. We it's like, what is it? Our brains crave that connection. Mm-hmm. And so even if we got two data points that aren't even connected, and we look at those, and for some reason we say, oh, wait, there is a connection here. Even if there isn't, our brains love that. They get that dopamine hit when we can create that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is fascinating. I talk a lot about the future of organizations is smaller human footprint.
Yeah.
So less people, more connected, rowing in the same direction. And I think values and mission become even more critical here. And with Hatchproof, it's around, you don't want to lose those people, because if it costs you $240K today, it's going to cost you $1 million in the future, because those are all A players. And talk to me about how storytelling, creates this connectivity of not losing that talent a bit more. Because, I think that's what we're really, at least part of our mission at Hatchproof is like, keep your best talent, uncover your best talent, keep them rowing in the same direction. How do they sort of connect?
Yeah. And I think it's collaborating on that shared narrative. I think that's the biggest thing. So as a leader goes out there, and if you want to keep those A players in your organization, you just want to keep people from disengaging in your organization. Because honestly, in today's economy, that's the biggest risk you have, is you've got a lot of disengagement, right? And that's worse than actually having nobody at all, because you're still paying for something and not actually potentially seeing the benefit, is actually including people in that narrative storytelling process. And actually, we actually have a vision creation exercise that we've actually built within Atlassian that is part of our playbook. And the whole idea is to bring your team into creating the vision you have for what your team does, or what this product's for, or what problem you're trying to solve. Because there's one thing for someone to come down from the mountains with the tablets and say, here is our vision. It's a whole other thing to bring people in saying, let's create our collective story. Here's where we're trying to go. Here's the intent of what we're trying to do. What's the story we have? And so actually, I love running workshops that get us to do that, whether it be doing things where we kind of, we have to collectively visualize what the future looks like, so we all own it some level. Even simple things like, one of my favorite visioning exercises is called Postcard from the Future, where we all create different postcards talking about the future of our team, the future, what a product, someone who uses our product tells us here in a year or two, whatever it is. But it's that reflective opportunity to think about, okay, this is what we could be. And I think the biggest thing that we see with A players leaving is that A players want to be part of that story. They want to help weave that narrative. And so we have to make sure they're part of it. And if they're not, they're going to, again, goes right back to what we're talking about. They're going to weave a new narrative. They're going to weave a narrative that has them moving to where they can do that. And so for us, even like I said at Atlassian, it's a big part of us with our vision creation. It's a big thing I do with leaders to help them think about, how do you include people in that process?
And when it comes to change and that A talent leaving and walking out the door, I think when leadership comes and says, okay, here's this, we're doing another like you said earlier with the leaders who kept their hands up.
Believe me this time, guys. This one will work.
Yeah. Just believe it. So eyes glaze over, right?
100%.
When they mention another change, another transformation. And it reminds me of one aspect of story, which you probably know more than me, Mark, is the use of analogy and metaphor. And we'll link to it in the show notes if we can. There's this great study which showed that when leaders announce and then carry out a change initiative, if they use metaphor, and very simple, like in that sort of, the narrative that they set up, people are more likely to go along for the ride and stick long term. So when you look at like retention versus attrition. So that's just one very small and easy example to inject metaphor and analogy in that story to get people to stay long term.
And the biggest reason why metaphor works, I've found, is that it causes you as a leader to actually answer the question, why? Why are we doing this change? Because if you're just saying we're making a change, you could say, oh, we're doing this for financial reasons, stuff like that. It's very surface level. If you have to create a metaphor around this change, if you have to create this the story about it, it causes you to reflect at a new level. It causes you to sit back and be like, okay, well, why would this happen in this situation? And now all of a sudden you've got to actually create what I would consider like a real answer to that. Not a surface level answer, a real answer. And that's why all of a sudden people will be like, I get it. I understand it. Because we're smart. We know when, if you're saying we're doing this because it's going to say, we're in a new time where it's going to save us time. And you're like, AI is a great example. They come in and say, oh, it's going to make us more efficient, more effective. They think that's the why that's there. No, that's not the why. You have to come up with that metaphor to help you kind of figure out, well, what's really the why here that I need people to get behind.
Yeah, that's amazing. I was just reflecting back on just my leadership style and what I could be doing better as you were talking, because you're right. Sometimes we just make the benefit the why, and that's not the case. And we definitely don't individualize it, right? Because I think everybody is kind of like, well, if I become more efficient, what do I do? Right. And so everybody's kind of, stuck in this, like, what does this mean to me? And we're kind of missing the boat. And
one of the nice things you can use, so whether it be, talking about AI is you don't, if you're bringing it in, don't feel like you shouldn't use it. This is a great opportunity to help you craft your story. AI is a great kind of counterpart to kind of go back and forth and actually build these narratives, actually help you think about the change more than maybe you have thought about it before. So go on, I encourage leaders, if you're thinking about a change, literally go out there, whether it be ChatGPT or any of these tools, and ask and say, hey, I'm making this change. I need to create an analogy or metaphor around this. Can you help me walk through this and ask me questions to make sure I get it right? Because sometimes we just don't know. We don't know the right questions to ask ourselves to better create that. All of a sudden, you've got a tool that can help you do that now. So definitely leverage the products to help you do that, because it's going to help you maybe answer questions that just didn't come up to you. And so, you would have just been ignorant to the idea.
I'm noticing so much, bottoms up versus top bottom change with AI. And so, we saw like enterprise organizations put like what they usually do, like put a lot of controls in place of like, okay, you can't use AI at work, but okay, now you can use this ChatGPT account. And what you saw coming from the bottom up were people are just bringing their second laptop to work, or,
or they've got one of these,
absolutely. And so you had this like bottoms up, no, we should use this because it will make me more efficient. Type of stuff. So it's interesting. I know you talk so much about modern ways of working, and Nick and I always joke about like the future of work and like, what the hell does that mean? Isn't it?
I know,
here?
Right?
Are we living it?
Ask us 4 years ago what the future of work is, and a lot of people wouldn't have been talking about AI. Here we are today.
Yeah. So like, what do you think we're in store for next 3 to 5 years?
So it's interesting. I think to your point we've got to find that connection between the bottom up and the top down. And one of the things, going back to like our AI collaboration index report that we ran, one of the things we found was, we'll put the report out there for the listeners to check out. But I believe it was something like we saw like a 33% increase in adoption of AI tools when the leader actually used it and did it in front of their team. Because part of this is, there's one thing to say, go forth and use it. There's another thing to use it yourself. And so showing the vulnerability, showing that it's okay. Because your point, a lot of organizations are hand slapping. They're like, okay, you can't use that. But if you're trying to promote something, go out there and again, craft your narrative. This is how I use it. Let me show you how we're doing it. We're in a one-on-one. I'm going to do something right here and add it into this, list of things. I'm using AI to do it. Fantastic. The thing is we also have to look at how do we change the story around how we're using AI to actually help protect us. When I think about privacy and I think about security, a lot of the concerns out there, a lot of the narratives that we've heard is around people dropping proprietary code out into ChatGPT or confidential information. And the thing is yes, some of that has happened. But when we think about our organizations, so we think about our controls that we can take, we can have more control, like protect our data more now than we ever could before, by still allowing people actually to use things like these agents, things like large language models. Because a great example is one of our customers. They are using, what they did is they've rolled out their forms of AI over the last year. And one of the things they've done is that they've actually implemented a few agents that will go out there, and as content is being shared, as it's being put into different spaces, whether it be in Confluence or SharePoint or wherever, the agent is looking around and says, hey, is that PII information? And if it is, it'll kind of quarantine that thing, and it will reach out to the person. So they say, hey, it looks like you're sharing PII here. Is one, can you confirm that's correct? Two, if it is, can you scrub that, or can I scrub that for you before you share that out more broadly? And so now all of a sudden we're able to protect that data from going beyond where it should. Whereas you think about before, when you think about today, if I don't have that, I might copy down some customer information. I might plop it in a page somewhere where I shouldn't, but I don't know. And there's nothing checking for that. And so using these agents and AI to help you actually keep yourself protected is actually going to save you more at the end of the day than if you didn't have it at all. Because again, we're fallible creatures. We don't know sometimes. We make assumptions. We have our own narratives in our head that says it's okay to do that. Let's actually leverage AI to help us reshape some of that narrative.
Mm-hmm. And tell the story too.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
Yeah. Well, Imran, you're on mute, I think.
Yeah, I said, Mark, speak for yourself. We are not fallible.
You're exactly. That's just you. Yeah. We're actually agents here. You don't know this.
Look behind
Sora 2 has done some amazing stuff.
Yeah. The video model.
I know, right? That's the thing. I don't even know anymore, guys. I don't even know.
No, I've tried, and they just can't quit they can't get the mustache quite right.
See, keep the mustache, and it'll be you'll always have to distinguish.
That's it. Well, Mark, I could listen to your stories all day, but just being mindful of your time. We have one final question that we ask all guests, and the rule is it can only be a yes or no answer from you. Okay. And the question is, do you say please and thanks when you're interacting with your LLM of choice? Yes. Because primarily, when the robot uprising comes, I want them to know I was one of the nice guys. Well, Mark, thanks so much. This has been always great chatting with you. So, really appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me, gentlemen. It's been a great time chatting with you, and looking forward to future episodes. Cheers.
Appreciate it, Mark.